It's been 100 days now since the Brexit vote of June the 23rd, and I wanted to use the opportunity to give some thoughts and reflections to you all on what we are seeing as a result of that vote. There is no doubt that the vote itself came to a surprise to many people, not least our political leaders. And of course, these last 3 months or so have been a lot of discussion about what does Brexit actually mean. As we've engaged with our members and as we've worked through different forums with business leaders and policymakers and others, what we're seeing is some short-term impacts, but there are also some very important longer-term considerations. In the short term, I think the good news is that broadly speaking, the indicators seem to be that recruitment has recovered to something of its pre-Brexit levels. In other words, if there was a slowdown for a period whilst we kind of absorbed the decision of Brexit, then businesses have come back to saying, no, but we've got to continue to grow our businesses and we need to recruit the people that we need. However, what we have also seen is the concern about things like workplace tensions, about whether migrant workers or people who are just different from us really feel welcomed. And we've stressed that from the outset, that Brexit in that context should be seen as a very strong reminder of the need to ensure that we are creating safe places at work, inclusive working environments, and really engaging and seeking to reinforce that engagement with our people. So we've seen those sorts of short-term effects. We've also seen some short-term effects around the currency, the drop of the pound against the euro and the dollar in particular. That would depend a bit on how much you're into import or export, but there's no doubt that it's also leading to some trends that many would observe about their ability to attract EU migrant workers, not just at necessarily the lower skill end, but also, interestingly, at the high skill end as well. And indeed, EU migrant workers in the United Kingdom making their own choices about where to be, partly based on some concerns they may have as to whether the UK is as welcoming as they thought it was in the past, but also just the fact of, the pound being worth slightly less. Now, as we look into the more medium term, then the first point is the concerns that many people have expressed about a slowdown in investment in the development of the workforce and skills building and things like that. Now, in times of uncertainty, that's often what happens. Business can try to constrain their costs, and of course people would see often investment in the workforce as a cost issue. But the reality is that Brexit is only one of many things that are creating a much more uncertain world. We've been talking for a while about the trends in work, the trends in the workforce and the trends in the workplace, often driven by things like technology or very different views of what skills and capabilities we need, or even what organizations and how we're going to be working in the future. And those are all trends which have been driving our thinking for quite some time and do create a more uncertain world. So it's imperative, not just because of Brexit, but that we really do work on these more strategic elements of our organisations, all the way from understanding our workforce today, what kind of capabilities we're going to need in the future, what sort of options we have in terms of how we access skills and talent, what we need to do in investing in skills and development of that workforce, and truly aligned to business priorities and strategy. It's very hard to predict exactly where Brexit is going to lead us, but we should see it as an opportunity to remind ourselves of the things that are really, really important in building our long-term sustainable businesses. First of all, that we understand the context in which we're operating and these many other changes that are impacting us, that we're taking the longer-term view of our workforces, the capabilities of our organisation that we need, the options that we may have around access to skills and talent, particularly recognising that one of the likely effects of Brexit is a constraining in some ways of migrant labour into the United Kingdom. But also other things like what kind of culture we're trying to create as an organisation, and do we really have the values embedded throughout, particularly around areas like diversity and inclusion. So in the end, whatever the medium term will produce in terms of real conclusions for Brexit, and it may take months if not years really to resolve all of these things, it puts the imperative of what we do as a profession very front and centre. It says we have to build around these fundamentals of what good business is, about what inclusive and diverse environments are and how those drive good business performance, and that we are investing in the kinds of capabilities that we're going to need for our workforces for the future, whatever scenario we end up with. As the CIPD, we're going to continue to push on these issues. We're going to continue to engage with you as the membership, and we will of course continue very much to be a part of the ongoing consultation and dialogue about the post-Brexit world, about the options that we have, and about helping to shape ultimately the future of work debates, which are now becoming so widespread. So thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you, sharing our thoughts with you, but also of course hearing back from you as to how you're seeing the evolution of these ideas in your own organisations, and any concerns and indeed opportunities that you see coming out of this future world.